is Monday, January 6th, 2025, first video of the year. My name is Kessie Ian Anderson, and welcome back for another edition of Heresiarch. In this, we're going to talk about Pharmakiea, the rod of Asclepius, and transhumanism. So, let's jump in and get started. What is the rod of Asclepius, and why should we care? If you look into the medical industry, you will see that that is their symbol, the rod of Asclepius. Who was Asclepius? Let's look into it. So Asclepius was the ancient Greek god of medicine. He was also credited with powers of prophecy. Keep that in mind. Powers of prophecy. How could medicine influence prophecy? The god had several sanctuaries across Greece. The most famous was at Epidaurus, which became an important center of healing in both ancient Greek and Roman times and was the site of athletic, dramatic, and musical games held in Asclepius' honor every 4 years. In Greek mythology, Asclepius was a demigod hero, as he was the son of divine Apollo, and his mother was the mortal Coronis from Thessaly. So these are considered Greek myths. A demigod. Half human, half god. So how come that's called a myth, yet modern Christianity, for example, accepts theirs as truth? The idea that Jesus was half god, half mortal. So in this case, it was Apollo, and his mother was the mortal Coronis from Thessaly. In some accounts, Coronis abandoned her child near Epidaurus in shame for his illegitimacy and left... Gotta make sure I get this here. Left the baby to be looked after by a goat and a dog. However, in a different version of the story, Coronis was killed by Apollo for being unfaithful, whilst in yet another version, the Messenian Arsinoe was the unfortunate mother of Asclepius. Now, that's what's interesting to me about the gods and mortals. I've been rewatching Game of Thrones, and the whole idea of kings having all these bastard children, and the idea was to keep your bloodline going. So bloodline basically trumped all morals. And what's interesting here is, take Zeus, for example. He was basically the king philanderer with Heracles, or Hercules, however you want to call it, and a bunch of different other half-human, half mortal, half Zeusian god children. But yet, if the woman has relations with somebody else, she's unfaithful. Yeah, it's cool for him to run around and do whatever he wants. Asclepius met a tragic end when he was killed by a thunderbolt thrown by Zeus. This was because the father of the gods saw Asclepius and his art of healing as a threat to the eternal division between humanity and the gods, especially following rumors that Asclepius' healing powers were so formidable that he could even raise the dead, for which, in another medical association with snakes, he used the blood of Medusa given to him by Athena. Apollo protested against his son's treatment, but himself punished by Zeus for impiety and made to serve Admetos, the king of Thessaly, for 1 year. The king of Thessaly for 1 year. Asclepius himself was deified following his death, and in some myths he also became the constellation Ophiuchus. Now the Asclepius, that rod, that is the medical industry. It goes to him. What's interesting is he was a mortal who was able to raise the dead. He was about to become immortal. He was going to transcend from being mortal to immortal on his own without the need of godly intervention. So I find that very interesting that our medical, the anti-aging, life prolonging longevity, all of that is tied into the medical industry. Everything is medical. So let's look up a word, Pharmakiea. It's a noun. Genitive First, declension pharmacy, the use of drugs or medicines, sorcery, witchcraft. That is huge. I'm telling you, everything we're going through right now is because of drugs and our mind. Almost everybody you know is on drugs. Oh, well, everybody you know is on drugs. Everybody. Almost every single person has a prescription of something. Oh, but in your mind, that's okay because it came from the pharmacist. Is that really it? Oh, because they didn't buy it from a drug dealer? So our local culture, our nomenclature has put drugs, if it comes from a pharmacy, if it comes from your local CVS or Walmart, it's okay. Oh, a doctor prescribed it to me. A dentist prescribed it to me. But yet, if you went out and got it from some dude out in the woods who harvested it himself, it's all of a sudden a bad thing. Now, I avoid all of it. I try to be the most drug-free person you've ever met. I just don't have a use for any of it. Except for maybe in a coffee, caffeine. I'm finished I'm probably close to about 400 days carnivore. So I'm trying to eat as little sugar as possible. I've probably had about 20 cheat days this whole time. But I'm trying to avoid as much junk and drugs as possible. So temperance societies in the 1800s. So as many of you know, I've said this in other videos, I was raised Mormon. And they have a thing called the Word of Wisdom. And the Word of Wisdom is the code that they live by when it comes to alcohol, tea, tobacco, and other drugs. Well, before it was codified and accepted as 100% law, it was just counsel. But the modern Mormon is now so inculcated or immersed in their culture that anything outside of their culture doesn't make sense to them. And what I mean by that is telling them that Joseph Smith drank alcohol, Joseph Smith drank coffee, Joseph Smith had cigars and tobacco, as well as he may have, and I will argue, he had other access to other drugs. And to modern day Mormons, it's the most taboo, craziest thing to ever hear. However, if you just go back into the 1900s and the 1800s, people were taking morphine as just an over-the-counter drug that they could buy. Coca-Cola had cocaine in it. Cocaine cola. So there was a lot of drugs involved in the past that would just freak people out. But the cabal is doing a long con on all of us, and they are hitting us in different areas instead of just, we look at drugs as just being pills or anesthesia. But there's way more to it. What about vaccines? And that's where I'm going to go into here in a minute. So, Asclepius, the rod of Asclepius. This guy was trying to become immortal. Gentleman in the upper right corner. And the snake, well, he used venoms. Along with there were plants and herbs, of course. But the big drugs of the time in ancient Greece, Northern Africa, all those times was snake venoms. And I will make an argument that is why that's why there's not a big push on the Greek translation of the Bible, is because it takes you down that path. There was a gentleman during the scamdemic, and his name was Dr. Ardis. Dr. Brian Ardis is his name. If you haven't listened to any of his speeches, he gave one where he outed Fauci about remdesivir, because they were prescribing remdesivir to everybody, and yet that is literally what was causing people's deaths. It didn't even pass the initial drug trials they were using it for, oh my gosh, I had it in my head and I just lost what that trial was about, what the sickness was that they were testing it on, and it had like a 55% mortality rate. Didn't even pass, and yet they chose to repurpose that drug and use it for COVID. Made no sense. And then when you find out that between remdesivir and ventilators, that was literally killing people, well, Dr. Artis came out and he goes in further, talks about the magic juice, and in it he says that they use snake venom. And what's funny is tons of the PAYtriates in the Patriot community lost their minds about that idea. Snake venom, and you can literally go into the NIS, National Institute of Science, you can go to NHI, you can go to the Health Institute, you can look into it, and it's all over the place. That's how it is. That is a transport mechanism in your body, is using snake venom. It's a reality. So he said it. And then I go and I listen to Dr. Aman Hillman, and he goes into a ton of Greek medicine. And the Greeks used it as well as for the mystery cults. Now, mystery in a biblical sense is an ordinance. An ordinance is a ritual. It's when you take an idea and you physically act on it in a ritualistic form. So baptism, modern baptism, I'm not talking actual true what baptism is, because if you look into the Greek, all of the words gospel, evangeliato, that means gospel, in Bulgarian, evangeliato, but it also in Greek, evangelie, that is a drug term. Gospel is a drug term. Christing is a drug term. Baptism is a drug term. Everything is drugs. Everything. Now, let's go back up. And Pharmakiea. The use of drugs or medicines, sorcery, witchcraft. There's a term called theriac. And a theriac is, you have dote and antidote. You have Christ and antichrist. It's all drugs. And when Asclepius is also attributed to prophecy, how do you think they got these visions? Well, anointing of oil. What is the oil? That's why I push people to listen to Dr. Aman Hillman. He posits that the body, and there's a reason why I 100% believe this, that the human body is what creates the drugs. So for everybody in the truther crowd who studied adrenochrome, Pizzagate, all of that, that's literally going on still, adrenochrome is something that the body produces under torture, stress, whatever. And there's a concept called onboarding of a drug. So depending on which drug you've been thrown into, and I always think of The Princess Bride on this, and Vizzini, you fell victim to one of the classic blunders. And when he takes on the man in black in their test of wits to the death, I accept. You fell victim to one of the classic blunders, iocane powder. So iocane powder, the man in black built an immunity to iocane powder. Well, what you're going to find out, if you listen to Aman Hillman or you do your own research, you will find out that this stuff is very real. The whole idea of venoms. He said that during what he's read in the libraries, in the Greek, the medical information, 9 different snakes for one concoction for one of the mysteries. And it is sex magic. It is blood magic. It is mystery occult. All right. So that's Dr. Artis. He pushed it, the idea of venoms. Everybody lost their mind. Aman Hillman, he talks about venoms. And I don't disagree. Now we have it going to wireless drugging. Amon Hillman said a phrase. I tried to find it, but I couldn't. Amon Hillman said, the human body creates the drugs. How is that possible? Does that even make sense at all? Well, what happens? Well, let's look at this. You walk outside during the summertime, the sun hits you. What does your body create because of the light hitting it? Vitamin D. Well, it's called optogenetics and photon. They have manipulated photons, which is light, and they have it down to where they can hit a single cell using nanotechnology carrier lasers. The singular laser can shoot a single cell with a light and cause it to create a drug. They call it wireless drugging. But for this to take place, you have to have biosensors inside of you. So everybody who's pushing med beds, Elysium-style med beds, you have to have this magic juice inside of you with the biosensors, and that's what the spike proteins are. However, the magic juice also has venom in it. That's a path. It's a carrier. I'm trying to remember the word. Not an adjuvant. Maybe that's the word. And then Sabrina Wallace, when she talks about it, she says that our body produces the drug as well, and they know it, and they are breaking it down by electromagnetic frequencies. So we're getting hit with different frequencies to cause different reactions. So in the past, MK Ultra was administered with drugs. Now it's being administered through other methods. I thought I had my MK Ultra picture, but maybe I don't. Now, another thing that I thought was interesting is how it's all mind. It's all perception. All mind and all perception. Let's go to the Greater and Lesser Keys of Solomon the King. So in this book, Greater and Lesser Keys of Solomon the King, by Crowley and Mathers, our good Satanist Crowley. In the first page, when he talks about magic, let's see. The spirits of the Goetia are portions of the human brain. It's all mind control. It's all making you see. And by see, it's use of drugs. Everything religiously is the use of drugs. It's the only way it makes sense. Now, they're taking this and they're hitting our brains with frequencies. And they are turning us into nodes. So there's a thing called Zigbee routing protocols. It's for your security systems, for your lights, it's for your HVAC controls, your doors, your internet, your remotes, your phones, you name it, your smart meters, your smart thermostats. It is all tied into these networks. Now they're making us, our human body, that node. And that's why I'm so, Pharmakiea is where it's at. That is the word. And all the breakoffs of it, Pharmakon, Pharmakiea, pharmacy, pharmaceuticals, injections, everything that's spinning off of that, everything has to do with us. So when Elon says we're going to Mars, why are all of the satellites that are up there, the Starlinks and everything, pointing at us? All the cube satellites pointing at us. Now, a cube satellite is a very small satellite. It doesn't have to be very big. It's a cube. That's why they call them CubeSats. You can look that up, Google fingers. So everything that is happening to us now, everything that is going on now, is because of pharmacy. The cabal knows the power of drugs. The cabal knows how to implement those, and they have been doing it. Now, I want to get into this book. I've pushed it before. Human Interaction, Emerging Technologies, and Future Systems. Now, I brought the PDF up here, so I'm going to see if I can get to it. because there's something I want to read to you. All right, so here we go. Let's get into this. So I'm going to lock that so that I can't move it. There's one thing in here. I'll scroll to the top first. No, I won't. One of the chapters in this book, differential non-autonomous representation of the integrative activity of a neural population by bilinear second-order model with delay. Can you even understand that title by itself? By Alexei V. Daneev, Anatoly V. Lakeyev, Vyacheslav Rusnov, Pavel Plaznev. Irkutsk State Transport University, Chernshevskogo, Irkutsk, Russia. Matrosov Institute for System Dynamics and Control Theory of S.B. Ross Lermontova. Irkutsk, Russia. Abstract. For neuromorphic processes specified by the behavior of a local neural population, for example, processes induced by a brain-machine interface, platform of the Neuralink type, so Elon Musk's Neuralink, we study the solvability of the problem of the existence of a differential realization of these processes in the class of bilinear, non-stationary, ordinary differential equations of the second order, with delay in a separable Hilbert space. Okay, just that first sentence. There's like 10 words already that we probably need to not only define, but jump into. Like, what the hell is a Hilbert space? I personally do not know offhand. This formulation belongs to the type of inverse problems for an additive combination of non-stationary linear and bilinear operators of evolutionary equations in an infinite dimensional Hilbert space. The meta-language of the theory being developed is the constructions of tensor products of Hilbert spaces, ortho-complemented lattice structures, the functional means of the nonlinear Rayleigh-Ritz operator, and the principle of maximum entropy. It is shown that the property of sublinearity of this operator permits one to obtain conditions for the existence of such differential realizations concurrently. Metric conditions of the continuity of the projectivization of this operator are substantiated with the calculation of the fundamental group of its compact image. This work was financially supported by the Russian Foundation for Basic Research. Introduction. Multidimensional neurodynamic models of synapse state evolution. Now, synapses, that's the connections in your brain. So this is massively high-level information. And we got to jump in on it. We've got to look into this stuff. We got to force ourselves to stop with the sports ball. We got to force ourselves. Like me, I'm jumped into this stupid game on Game Pass called Chivalry 2. And it is a time sink, waste of time, but gosh, I love it. But this is the stuff that matters. And if you don't understand that, and yet you're willing to come out and say what Sabrina says isn't true, snake venom can't be real, all of this stuff, I'm just going to accept modern version. And I bring up Bible stuff because there's a lot of religious subtexts and everything. The cabal knows how to play us like fiddles. We got to jump in and start learning this stuff. Human interaction, emerging technology. This book is over 1,000+ pages. And it just goes into the drones. It goes into information, like the hard information, like the computer, the algorithms, the mathematical equations that they have to do in order to allow the drones to do what they say. How to pattern themselves, how to fly, stuff that we take for granted. Like when you actually look to the technology and how advanced it is, your mind will be blown. And I guess the whole point of this, I just want you to believe more. I want you to just actually accept that there is more out there, that we, the people, regular humans, have been very clever to put some very massive technology into the works with artificial intelligences, large language models, golems, neuromorphic chips, optogenetics. Again, the optogenetics alone freaks me out, how light alone can wireless drug you. And that's what they're getting us ready for when they turn us into nodes. The biophysical convergence. Bio-cyber physical. So they want to take us and mix us man and machine. Man and digital. And is it to be Asclepius? Is it to make us become like God or to be what their version is of God. And according to religion, God is omniscient. Omniscient means all science. Is that how we're going to ascend ourselves? Is to put technology into play? I don't think that's how it works. Or at least I hope that's how it works. I hope that's not how it works. Anyway, let's just buckle up for 2025. Until next time.